and you're going to play games and ride bikes, and you're going to figure out what your kid is good at, what your kid likes, and really support them in that. If you do that until age 10, you will have a totally different person. Like their brain will develop so differently. Their mindset will be different. Their skill set towards people will be so different, and it'll set them up for success their whole life.
You're listening to CarSeat Questions, a podcast for parents of curious kids. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Eddie. And if you're anything like us, you either have a kid or you care for a kid with questions. Questions about all sorts of things.
So, for the next half hour, hop into the passenger seat, buckle your belt, and become childlike with us as the Lord takes us where He wants us to go.
Enjoy the show.
Well, Arlene, thank you so much for being with us today. Can you share a little bit about who you are, how you're connected to Moody, and maybe even a little bit about your book?
Yeah, well, it's great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me. I have written a few books with Moody. So my first book was Growing Up Social, and that was co-authored with Dr. Gary Chapman about kind of the infiltration of screens into our world and how we can raise relational kids who can still say, please, thank you, looking you in the eye, things like that. And so a lot has happened since that book came out. So we revised that. And now that book is called Screen Kids. And we also added a book to help grandparents, and that's Grandparenting Screen Kids. And my other books with Moody are Parents Rising and Calm, Cool, and Connected, 5 Digital Habits for a More Balanced Life. Like, okay, maybe it's us, mom and dad. We're the ones who need the help with the technology. So that has really been a joy and a fun thing to do. It's kept me very accountable to my family and my children. So my husband, James, and I have 3 kids, and it's crazy. So I know many of you listeners might be thinking, we are going to be in car seats forever, but it's not true. So my oldest is a freshman in college. We go boy, girl, girl. And then I've got a daughter who's a junior and a daughter in 8th grade. And we live in San Diego.
Can you maybe share with us a little bit about, just to start this conversation, we're going to be talking about screens and how screens affect our kids, but also they're kind of inevitable. So like, how do we, live with them? Can you share with us a little bit about what you learned in any of your books?
Totally. If you don't give this some thought and have a plan, it will get planned out for you.
Yeah.
So if you just kind of are like, this is how it is, this is, everyone's doing this, we'll just kind of answer the questions as they come. I'm afraid you're going to find yourself in a place that you wish you were not. So you really do have to be intentional, and you don't have to be afraid in the sense of like, oh, don't touch that. It's shiny, it's metal, don't touch that. So that's not what we're trying to instill in our kids, but we are trying to instill wisdom in how to use technology. And then we've got to have our eyes wide open to understand this is not the technology of 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. This is very highly addictive technology that we don't even really have to prove this, because if you've got a child and they're holding their tablet and you try to take it away from them, the battle that's going to ensue. And so we need to understand that, be wiser about that. And I think it's super important. If you will delay certain things, you will have such a different child, but you're going to have to be countercultural. So for us, it was just key decisions of when are we going to give that first smartphone? When are they going to get a personal tablet? When are they, going to start on social media? And really thinking that through and then doing it with our kids. And I can really attest to you that, you're not normal. Like, you're going to be weird compared to other people, let's say, if you do this thoughtfully, but you're going to be so much happier. It's going to work out so much better for you. So I really am wanting to come alongside of you and say, you know what, if you will delay that device, and part of it, let's say from, birth to 5, okay? So what are we trying to teach our kids when they need to be soothed, when they're bored, when they're, at a restaurant, you're trying to calm them down, or you're changing a diaper and trying to keep them calm. I heard a mom say, how did you ever do this before the phone? Like change a diaper. But what you're trying to do is teach your child other ways to soothe themselves, because what they're learning is, oh, I'm in a restaurant and they handed me a tablet. Oh, I'm getting changed and they handed me a tablet. Oh, I'm in the grocery store and they handed me a tablet. What the child is then learning is, oh, this is how I soothe myself. This is how I connect, is this tablet will get me through this dentist appointment or whatever it is, right? But really those lessons we want our kids to learn is, oh, my mom will get me through this appointment, or my dad will get me through this appointment, or my mom will talk to me while I'm getting my diaper changed and make goo goo gaga sounds. And that's how I get through this. And so there really is just this fundamental, huge thing that happens where our kids are then depending on devices way too early when they should be developing interpersonal skills. And that's a lot what screen kids will teach you. It'll teach you what's happening in the brain. It'll teach you what important emotional connections need to happen first.
Yeah, we've noticed that even just ourselves. Our son's 2.5.
Yeah.
And he was born during COVID, and we were both full-time working parents from home. And so we found ourselves relying a lot on screens.
Yeah.
I think we had boundaries in place of like what we would and wouldn't watch, and learned along the way what we would and wouldn't watch. But even then, it's like it's an addictive thing.
Yeah.
Or even grandparents, bless them. I think they love to give screens because it brings joy to kids, and they want to be a part of that joy. But we've also seen in our son, it's like, oh, if you're going to go be with grandma and grandpa, he's like, oh, TV? And that's like not what you want to correlate with being with grandma and grandpa. Yeah. You want to correlate the relationship and the love and the connection you have with them.
Like chocolate chip cookies?
Exactly.
Even if they're store-bought, you stick them in the oven, it's like chocolate chip cookies.
You want to, what are the experiences you're having with them? Not, oh, when grandma and grandpa are here, I'm going to get to watch a show.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we've seen that a lot in just 2.5 years.
Yeah, it goes back to like what you're saying. I think it just like brings them so much joy that they're able to like provide this.
Yeah, the grandparents,
for him, and like it's a good like thought, right? And like they're, especially for my parents, they're first time grandparents, and so everything is just like, oh, try this, and yes, I just want to give you everything, but even then, like with that does have to come like a certain level of boundaries, right? And I think like we've been a little bit more intentional about that lately, because like we've realized, right, like every time like my parents like want to come over, and he just wants right away like watch things, and it's like, no, like let's go and like hang out, and they came over to like spend time with you and play, and go show them this toy that you have that you've been playing with for 3 weeks or something. And they like go and have a blast.
Yeah. And that's so good, like to encourage parents and grandparents, like, us as adults to encourage our parents, like, no, you don't have to do that. Like they really want you just to read them a book, or just even asking them, I don't have time to do this. Could you read them a book for 10 minutes? And I think grandparents, if they are given something specific, they will do it. And they really do. That is why the why behind it is like, oh, I want to give you what you want. Like you're my grandchild and I want to give you what you want. Yeah. And it is something really to show grandparents, okay, see that, whatever, fourth grader that can't let go of the tablet. That's what we're trying to avoid. So if you could give different kinds of gifts, that would be really, really helpful, and just redirecting those gifts.
Yeah. I think, so I'm a producer on Mornings with Brian with Moody Radio Cleveland. And we've been talking a lot lately about the epidemic of teen girls. There's a bunch of studies coming out that teen girls are highly depressed, and in large part due to social media. But there's also studies that are showing if they're not on social media, they could also be depressed, because in this day and age, that's like where a teens community is. A teens community is on Snapchat or on TikTok. And so how would you go about like having both? Like I would want my child to have their community. I don't want them to feel left out. I want them to feel like they're connected. But also there is so much harm in social media. How can we have both? How can we have community?
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, that social media has an element of it that is different than just other things online. It is a different kind of medium that it's harder to use responsibly, because the whole thing is kind of set up on people comparing themselves, and it's just kind of set up in a certain way that, yes, it can be used, but most likely for girls, it's not being really used in a great positive way. So there's a new study from the University of North Carolina that just came out, and they were talking about, and I was listening to Dr. Leonard Sachs, a pediatrician, talk about it. So he said it much better. So I'll do my best with this. But the idea is, with a 6th or 7th grader, right? They're having this great brain growth, right? So when, for, it's going to happen for Trey too, so this wonderful brain growth where right now it's really strong in their amygdala. It's kind of like that primitive brain of, fear and anxiety, but now it's going to grow into their prefrontal cortex where they're going to be able to have emotional regulation and they're going to have self-control. And in those 3 years of like 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, usually they see this really lovely pattern in the brain of the amygdala losing a little power, and then that prefrontal cortex really coming into bear, and here it comes. So when they look at kids that don't use social media or not very much, they see that regular growth in the prefrontal cortex. But when they looked at kids who are on social media, and they said just checking like 20 times a day, which is really not that much if you have a tween or a teen, that's not that often. So 20 times a day, what they found was that was not happening. That prefrontal growth was not happening. And instead, it was all centering on the amygdala because they were being strengthened with that fear, anxiety, like it wasn't growing. And so to understand that, wait a minute, when I put these tools in my child's hand, maybe they're benign right now, and maybe it's really sweet and cute, but it just prepares them then as a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grader to really see this is my world. I need to be in this world. This is where I belong. It just sets them up for that. And then you have to think like, what is that doing to the brain? So I really think for us parents, as grandparents, we've got to get kind of bullish on the brain and saying, I want my child to have a fully functioning brain. And if that means that they're going to get left out, they're going to get left out of something.
Yeah.
So they can either get left out of, okay, yeah, my child's not on Snapchat right now, but think about it. I always love to tell the parent, you do it from good intentions. Like, I want my child to have friends. I don't want my child to be made fun of. I want my child to be there, like to be invited. But honestly, when you give your child Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it is you're going to give them in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, whenever you're going to do that, 10th grade, 11th grade, does that automatically, magically make them so happy and like so loved, and they're so belong, and they're so glad that they belong? I mean, it really, truly, if we're honest, it does the opposite, that all of a sudden now it opens up this whole world of like, oh my word, I thought I was good looking, but now I see like a gazillion people who are better looking than me.
Yeah.
So I better wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and start crimping my hair, like I heard a girl say, So it's like, is it really doing what we think it does? Is that trade of, okay, yeah, they're not left out because they have the same app as their friend? Is that trade of drama and pain and constantly measuring themselves? Is that pain worth it? Because really, if the social media is used as a way to schedule like, hey, let's meet on Friday, guys. Okay, great. And it's just used as a tool so you can spend face-to-face time together, and you're just checking in like, hey, practice is at 5. Oh, look at this super funny picture from the birthday party. And you're just checking in and it's out. That's one thing. But a lot of adults and kids are using it 2.5 hours a day.
Yeah.
And that is not doing just the little check-in.
No.
That's instead of being face-to-face.
Yes.
You are now just looking at this hardware, and that's why kids are so sick. So my daughters, we go to public school in San Diego, and my junior in high school and my 8th grader, they don't have any social media. And I just asked my daughter this actually literally yesterday, because I asked her, because I kind of know the answer, but I want to know. And I was like, do you feel left out? And she's like, Mom, she hangs out with 3 girls at school, at lunch. And she'll say like, yeah, those 3 girls, they use social media like after school to like post things to each other and talk to each other. But honestly, like they never make me feel like, oh, you missed it. Like you're not our friend anymore. She's like, they're my friend. Like these are my friends. And we can talk about whatever they posted, and they'll tell me like, oh, look at this and whatever. And she says she has the opposite response. She says she's never met anyone that's like, oh, you don't have social media, I can't be your friend. She says she honestly, public school, San Diego, like she says, I don't meet people like that, Mom. They're just like, whatever. Like, and they'll either be your friend or they won't, kind of thing. It wasn't that was the make or break point. And then she'll say that a lot of times more so people will say like, good on you, that you don't have it. Like she feels like a sense of respect almost. Yeah. So I think if kids are confident and they have friends in real life. So if the person is a loner, right, and they have no friends, and this is the only way to make friends, no wonder. But that's why as parents, we've got to help them have like a friend from a sport and a friend at youth group and maybe a family friend from when they were little kids, and we make special effort so they can see each other face to face because they really click, whatever it is that we're doing things. So our girls especially have friends in real life, because this social media thing is not doing it for them.
Yeah. And it's so hard as parents to like, the answer is not just monitor what your kids are watching, because you can't on Snapchat and you can't on TikTok. You have no idea. It goes away. You don't know what they're watching. And so, yeah, the answer is not to monitor it. So
I think it's so interesting how far social media has come, like when we've grown up, because like when you had a MySpace, right?
Ooh, you were
Shout
cool.
out to MySpace. You had to like get on a computer to do it, right? It wasn't like
or like instant messenger,
right?
Yeah.
So you had to like take the time to go on a computer, which was probably mostly like in a public space, like in your house,
right?
But now, of course, that's not what it's like.
Yeah.
But it's just different, right? How like especially like the different generations now think about, especially the younger generations now, how they view and think about social media.
Yeah. I think I've even seen some Gen Z that are like, high schoolers, maybe going into college. They've even decided to take a step back of social media because I think they see the effects that it's done to them, and they're making their own decision. Like, oh, I'm just going to like put my phone away, or I'm not going to be on my phone, or I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to have an Instagram or whatever. So I think they see it themselves, like the effects that it's having.
And that's kind of good news for parents, to kind of see that. And really, I think, and having your kids do other activities that are off the phone, that really helps, because then they realize, oh, I'd rather not do the phone because I'd rather, paint, or I'd rather rollerblade, or I'd rather ski, or whatever. Like they have other things that they'd much rather do than just sit there.
Is there an age that you would recommend for parents for waiting for your kids to get social media or screens? So I guess the two, social media and screens.
Yeah. So, it's a hard question, because they might be handed a tablet at school in elementary school that's theirs, or they might be given for us from 7th grade on, they were given a school issued iPad or a Chromebook or something like that. So let's say by screens, a personal device like that's theirs that you buy them, like a personal phone or a personal tablet. And, statistics will say half of 2 to 4-year-olds in America have their own tablet or phone. Like that's crazy, mind-blowing, just in terms of money, in terms of they're so young. So kids are getting this younger and younger. And I honestly think the more you can push that off, the better. So there's not this magic age. I'm not going to tell you, oh, when your child turns 13.8, here's what you give them. And when they turn 14.1, here's what you give them, because every child's going to be different. Your 16-year-old might not be able to handle what your 14-year-old can handle. But I will say with all authority, do not give them a smartphone in elementary school. They don't need it. It'll just make them older than they are and get them in trouble. And it'll be just dreadful. And you'll be like, what happened? Where did childhood go? So get them a dumb phone, get them a Gab phone, GABB, Gab wireless. And that it looks pretty fine like a normal phone, but it just calls, text, GPS, music. That's all. That's all your kid really needs if they're saying to you, oh, we need a phone, to communicate or whatever. So do not give your child a smartphone in elementary school. Do not give them social media. Do not give them anything in elementary school through 6th grade. Insist, because why do you want a 6th grader trying to act like an 8th grader, and then an 8th grader trying to act like a 12th grader? Like, you don't want it. So just for sure lay that down. And then I would really suggest in middle school and high school, we have just opted not to, because we have just seen that we felt like the rap sheet on the other side was longer than the sheet on the other side. But, Bill Gates waited till his kids were 14 to give a phone, and he kind of knew something about phones. And Steve Jobs did not, when he was asked, how do your kids like the iPad, when he was telling everyone in America to get an iPad, he's like, oh, I don't let my kids use the iPad. So, we should kind of take clues from these people of like, why did you do that? So, And then have the concept like a driver's license. Like you don't just hand kids keys, like give them one lesson and then be like, okay, drive around. In the same way, we wouldn't just drop off a sixth grader at a mall for 6 hours and be like, hey, use good judgment, buddy. I'll see you in 6 hours. You know, hang around good people, go to good places. You know, you don't know. And it's the same thing when you hand a device to your child. You don't know if they're going to drive off a cliff. You don't know who they're meeting in the mall. You just don't know. And you can't expect, even if they're a good kid, you can't expect that they have like this amazing self-control to stay away from addictive behaviors. Why would you expect that? You would never like open all this alcohol around them and be like, oh, you just make good choices, buddy. Like it just is kind of mind-boggling that we think that they could do that. Adults have a hard time doing it. Why would a child who doesn't have a fully functioning brain developed yet be able to? So I really think the more you can push off them having their own social media, their own tablet, their own phone, you know, wait till high school, let them start with a dumb phone first, let them start with one social media platform and tell them it's a trial, like not like you have this forever, but hey, let's try 30 days on Instagram and you and I will chat and we'll talk about who we're following on Instagram together and we'll kind of talk about how it makes us feel and how much time we're using. Is it time well used? Is it wasted? And you know what? As a parent, this is the big thing I think of why kids are so in trouble. It's because we don't want to change. We don't want to admit like, oh man, I waste a lot of time on social media. We don't want to have that kind of scrutiny on us. So we're like, child of mine, do whatever you want. I'll do whatever I want. And we'll just kind of live happily side by side. So really, if we can say, hey, I will also use social media responsibly and we'll do it together. And you can hold me accountable and say, Mom, you are looking at Instagram way too much. You need to put that down and you need the 30-minute little limit too, Mom. You know, those kinds of conversations and really start it slow and let your child know when we see that it's hurting you, we're going to pull it back. And that's not going to be popular, but this is not a popularity contest, right? This is like, I'm your parent and I'm the one who's supposed to guide you. And when you're 18 and out of the house, you know, you can look at social media till you're blue in the face. You know, that's going to be on you. But when you're with me, this is something you're going to have to wait to do.
Yeah. I think when you were talking about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, there was that documentary on social media. I don't remember what it's called on like Netflix or something.
Social Dilemma. It's amazing. It's very good.
I think it was the founder of Pinterest or like one of the creators.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, my kids don't have social media.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Can you imagine? Right?
I'm like, you created this and your kids don't have it.
Right? It's just like, okay.
Yeah, that really because they know the behind the scenes of like, we're collecting your information. Yeah, we're collecting your data and we're providing you things in your feed to make you come back, to make you be addicted to this thing. Yeah. And it's like, so he made that and he's not letting his kids be on it, which speaks volumes.
And good for him, right? That he's now like, hey, I'm kind of sorry and I'm saying so. Like, that's pretty amazing.
Right. There's obviously, we've talked about a lot of negative things about screens on social media. Do you think there's any positive things that we can find in social media?
Yeah, you know, I think if you're really using it to stay in touch with certain people, like if you used it to stay in touch with the people you actually know in real life, and you're really just wanting to look at their baby being born, or you want to really look at them on their family vacation, or you really want to watch they just were in a game and you want to watch them play. Like, I think that can be very positive. I think what's tricky about it though is sometimes, you know, how you see something and you feel like you've already talked to that person about it. You know, like I just looked at my friend's pictures. So she's vacationing in Israel. So I feel like, oh yeah, I looked at your pictures. I'm good. Like I know exactly where you've been. I know you were there. I don't need, but then to realize, no, and when she comes back, like I should have a conversation to really say like, hey, how was that? So I think it has even, you know, and I don't mean to be turning it into a negative, but we just have to be watchful that you still need that interaction together. It's not a replacement. So if it can supplement what you're doing, I think it's really good actually for grandparents when your kids are older and they're already on social media. If the grandparent, you know, was so hip and like was on it and could then call that grandchild and talk to them and be like, oh, I saw that you win your game. That's so cool. Like, that's kind of nice for that child to know, like, oh, my grandma follows my feed and like knows I just went and won this game. Like, I think that can be a very positive use of social media. Of course, if you have a purpose, like, let's say you're very, like, you love Jesus and you want other people to love Jesus, like, that could be cool for you to be like, I'm going to create little clips of situations of when I pray and how God answered, and I'm going to share those on social media. Like that could be pretty cool. So I
Yeah.
think the purpose is important, and you really have to like, it's hard because you start with that purpose,
Yeah.
but then like 15, 20 minutes later, you're just like scrolling through and like watching entertaining, amusing things. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, where did all the time go? But I think those are some ways you could use it well.
Yeah. Our niece has like a little watch, and she can only call or text numbers that my sister puts in the watch.
Yeah.
And the texts are only like specific things, like hey, or like love you, or like can you chat? And it's like
Call me.
Call me. Yeah, that was my favorite one. She just texts me, call me. And then she can send like little voice notes or whatever. And then you could call her and she's just talking on her
That's awesome.
watch.
Yeah.
And my sister's like, I want her to have a relationship with her aunts and her grandparents, like without me. Like I want her to be able to build that, but in like a safe way, because we don't live in the same place. So
I love that.
Yeah. It's very sweet.
Call me. I love that.
Call me. That was my favorite. I love that one. How would you talk to your teens about being safe online once they do get that phone or once they do get on social media? How would you talk with them about how to stay safe online?
Isn't it interesting? Because you have to back all the way up. And if you've got that relationship with your teenager that they know you are for them, they're going to listen to you in a certain way. But if they think like, okay, my parent is just completely against me, like that's a different conversation. So, obviously it kind of depends on where you are. But I think being as honest as possible, showing them statistics, saying, hey, Wall Street Journal, what do you think about this? A Wall Street Journal person, they posed as a 13-year-old on TikTok and they got 569 videos about drug use in a week. Like be real with your kids and don't find as many statistics as you can. And we have a lot of stats in Screen Kids. So it doesn't just sound like mom and dad are crazy and they're just like so old fashioned. Like show them the statistics, have them talk to a police officer that you might know at your church and have them say like how many, kinds of things. It's funny. We think, oh, if we don't give them a phone, like they're going to get kidnapped and they're going to, it's going to be so awful. But I'm sure the police hear much more about like, oh, okay, this person met this predator online. And, I'm sure they hear that a whole lot more than, oh, they were kidnapped and they didn't have a phone on them, So be real with your teenager about, hey, we know you want to use this to get in touch with your friends. We get that. We understand that. We know that you want to kind of know what's happening in culture, but you got to know and it's funny, we talk about, more of the predator stuff, and that is real. Yeah. But I think the greater danger is just what is pulling on your heart towards the things of God or the things of the world. That's way more, because there might be, for every one like godly thing your child is going to be presented, there's going to be 99 things that are anti-God, anti-family, anti-America, that's all going to be about me. So it's going to look nice, make you are the center of the universe. That's the idea. So you can talk to your child like your social media is going to tell you you are the boss, you are the center of the universe, but are you really? Like, what have you found? And, depending on if your child knows Christ, has a relationship with Christ, you can point out like, no, really our life is about, Lord, it's your will, not my will. And so social media is going to pull you into exalting, all your wants, because that's what it is. It's just everything is catered towards you. So I think having these honest conversations, asking them like, what's important to you? Like right now in this stage of your life, what's important to you? Let's put on a piece of paper. Okay, great. Okay. Right now, soccer is really important to you. Well, let's make sure you have enough time for practice. You want to make good grades because you want to go be able to choose a college. Okay. So you need time for your homework, and really help them see that, okay, this social media thing should be part of my life, but not all of my life, and give them the buy-in of what's good for me and like healthy in that way. And let me see how that works. So I think being as like real as possible is helpful, because your kids will feel that like my parents really is trying to help me.
Yeah. We ask this question to all of our guests. It's kind of our final two questions is, what's one misconception that you've heard about kids and screens? And the other one would be, what is one thing you want every child to know about screens?
All right, let's see. These are hard questions because you just asked for one. If we could talk for 2 hours, that'd be fine. Okay. The one misconception I think that is, if I don't give my child a screen, they will be left behind. Like they are going to flip burgers all their life, because all of life is technology. And that is so not true, because they did a study in UCLA where they had 12 users that used technology and they scanned their brain, and then they had 12 non-users scan their brains, and their brains were different. The ones that use technology, like, are on the internet all the time, they had really quick decision-making skills. They had periphery vision. They could see all the ads on the sides, etc. They told the non-users, just go on the internet for 5 hours and come back to us next week. They went on for 5 hours. They came back, and their same brain parts, lit up for periphery vision. They could find the ads now and like quick decision making on what link should I click on. So technology is super easy to learn. You know this because you can hand Trey a tablet and he can like know what to do with it. He's not like,
Yes.
what do I do with this? Like technology is super easy to learn, but are the skills of paying attention, reading, showing affection, reining in your anger, being diligent to work towards a goal, is that easy to learn? No, that takes time. So really, if you have a child who is very low tech in their life, and then let's say at age 15, 16, 17, 18, their brain is going to be so much more ready to handle that technology that they will be the boss. So don't be afraid that your child will be left behind. My child did not have a smartphone all the way through high school, and he did just fine. Just fine. So that would be the misconception. And then I think if I were to say one thing for parents, it'd be for parents of young kids, if you can raise your kids differently without the screen, like let's say you just really say, we're going to do things in real life till you're 10 years old. We're not going to do video games. We're not going to do social media. We're going to watch limited TV. Like you can totally watch TV and movies. That's fine. But you're going to watch, 2 hours on the weekend. You're not going to watch like 8 hours a day kind of thing, right? But instead, you're going to read books, and you're going to have pets, and you're going to play games and ride bikes, and you're going to figure out what your kid is good at, what your kid likes, and really support them in that. If you do that until age 10, you will have a totally different person. Like their brain will develop so differently. Their mindset will be different. Their skill set towards people will be so different. It'll set them up for success their whole life. So that's what I want everyone to know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I think this was great, especially now for us, right, with having Trey. Again, with also Trey being born during the height of the pandemic. It's just good to know that like it's okay to have boundaries and that there's hope. That there's hope. That's always encouraging. And in the long run, like he, not only us, but he's also going to be better for it. And that's what we, would hope for. And so, Arlene, thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about screens and social media. And with all of our episodes, we like to end with a benediction. So if you would join us in that. To him who is able to do far more than we can understand, may he give us the wisdom to raise our children, to first love God above all else, and love others as themselves. Go in peace.
Amen. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Eddie. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Arlene. And thank you, listener, for joining us today. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube to watch the episodes. Also, be sure to subscribe and like wherever you get your podcasts so you can listen to episodes every Wednesday. Thanks.
Bye.